And I know, and I thought of you, and I was like, I'll wear one. You let me know when you can wear it. It's not a flattering look for me.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for the August 7th, 2025 regular City Council meeting. The time is 6:30 p.m. We'll begin with the roll call. Mayor and Council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
Here.
Councilmember Roden.
Here and present.
Councilmember Olvera.
Here.
Councilmember Pearson. Here. Councilmember Parker.
Here.
And Councilmember Swarek.
Here.
With 7 of 7 council members present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Amanda. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you all. And we'd like to remind everybody that we do live broadcast this meeting. And would like to welcome everybody that's joining us here in the police training room for the council meeting, but also welcome all those that are joining us by the live broadcast. If during the meeting you do get an opportunity to speak as part of this meeting for the people that are here in the room, I ask that all individuals please use the podium up here with the microphone. And the reason for that is if you speak from your seats, the individuals that are watching the meeting by live broadcast cannot hear the comments. So we ask that you use the microphone. And if you do get an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that you introduce yourself. And for residents, please state if you're a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch or not. And for those individuals that are here as part of the agenda items, if you're here with the company, please state which company you are here from. And with that, we'll move on to our citizens to be heard. And we'd just like to, I apologize, hold on a second. For citizens to be heard in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council may not discuss or take action on any item that is not posted on the agenda for tonight. And any speakers that do speak as part of citizens to be heard, I ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. And we did have one individual that did sign up to speak, Chris Depke.
Evening, Council. Chris Depke, a 30-plus year resident of Fair Oaks Ranch. I'm here to again propose that Council post at least the audio, but hopefully the video recordings of committee and board and commission meetings on the web at some point, reasonable point after the meetings. Only your meetings are posted in a reasonable period, and I believe it would benefit the public that they could see what has happened at some of the meetings if they haven't been able to attend. The scope is limited because there are not that many committees and they don't meet as frequently as you do, and I believe the city staff can provide you the estimates if there are any additional costs that are required. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for being here tonight and your comments. Mr. Depke was the only individual that did sign up to speak as part of Citizens to be Heard. Are there any other individuals here tonight that did not get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak at this time? All right, then we'll move on to our presentation item tonight. We do have one presentation item, and I'll turn it over to Joanna to present a 10-year service award.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. My name is Joanna Merrill. I'm the Director of Human Resources and Communications here at Fair Oaks Ranch. And today we have the honor of recognizing our interim lieutenant, Alex Willis, for 10 outstanding years of service here with us and his fellow officers. Alex began his career with the city back in July of 2015 when he was hired as a patrol officer. His dedication and professionalism quickly set him apart, and in July of 21, he was promoted to sergeant. And most recently, in July of '24, Alex was entrusted with the role of interim lieutenant, which is just a testament to his leadership and commitment to his department and to the city as a whole. Throughout his career, Alex has consistently gone above and beyond the call of duty in many areas. In 2024, he was named our Employee of the Quarter 4 winner. And one of the nomination notes that we had for him was that he stepped up several times and answered the request that was presented to him with great bravery, demonstrating extraordinary leadership. And if you guys remember, these are nominations that are provided by his peers, not necessarily just other officers, but potentially other workers here at the city as well. Alex's dedication to protecting our community has been recognized throughout his tenure here with not one, but 2 life-saving awards. The first in January of 2021 and the second in October of 2023 for his heroic actions that directly saved the lives of our valued residents. And in addition to these field accomplishments, Alex is deeply committed to his professional excellence. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice at the Texas State University level, a Master Peace Officer certification, and multiple, and I do mean multiple, advanced instructor certifications in several different areas. So these credentials, again, they just not only reflect his personal dedication to growth, but his role in training and mentoring the next generation of officers here at the City of Fair Oaks Ranch. And Alex, your decade of service has been marked by courage and leadership and an unwavering commitment to the safety and well-being of our community. So on behalf of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, we thank you for your 10 years of exceptional service and your professionalism and just the positive impact that you've had not only on your department, but your colleagues and your residents here at the city as well. So congratulations, and please join me in thanking Alex for his service. And as always, we have a plaque here that designates his years of service. We hope that he places that on his wall somewhere to recognize that, and then an award to commemorate his service as well. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Alex, 10 years is it's a big commitment, and it's been a pleasure to have you here at serving the City of Fair Oaks Ranch. And honestly, from my standpoint, it's great to be on your team, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's really been an honor to be able to serve the city and the community and all its residents, so thank you for this recognition. Appreciate it.
With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda items tonight. We do have 5 items on the consent agenda. First, the approval of the July 17th, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes. Second, approval of the second reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Utilities, Article 13.08, Water and Wastewater Impact Fees, to include amendments to land use assumptions, capital improvement plans, and water and wastewater impact fees, and providing for an effective date. Third, approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of a purchase order with Aqua Metric Sales Company for base stations for the water plants, expenditure of the required funds, and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager. Fourth, approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of agreement with Anytime Fuel Pros LLC for an on-site fuel delivery, expenditure of the required funds, and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager. And last, approval of Councilmember Pearson's absence from the July 17th, 2025 regular city council meeting. Is there any council member that would like to remove any of these items from consent to consideration? Everybody's good?
Good.
Hey, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
From Keith, and a second? From Scott. With the motion on the table, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we'll move on to our consideration items for tonight. And the first consideration item that we have is the consideration and the possible action on a resolution approving amendment number 1 to the Post Oak Development Agreement and authorizing the city manager to execute all relatable documents. And Scott, you're gonna kick this one off for us?
I will. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Scott Huesingate, City Manager. And tonight, I'm happy to present and walk through this amendment number 1 to the Post Oak Development Agreement. And we'll happily recommend its approval at the end of the presentation. A quick background, I know most everyone, certainly at the dais, is familiar with the history of this parcel. Of course, we all know this was originally approved as a development agreement for what was then known as the Reserve. That was first approved back in 2013, and it was originally approved for 635 lots plus 10 additional living unit equivalents, or LUEs, for irrigation. Fast forward to May of this year, this council approved an amended development agreement that was approved on May 20th for what is now known as the Post Oak subdivision for the same parcel. Subsequently, later in the year, in July, the council approved the public improvement district associated with the development and the annexation of the property. Both of those occurred just last month in July. So following those approvals, staff and the developer have identified several amendments within the amended development agreement that I think will make this a stronger and also a much clearer agreement that we'll go through. I think these changes are a big win for the city, and we'll talk about that, and I think they will be and should be for the developer as well. So I'll focus in the presentation on the substantive portions of the agreement. On your dais, you have several housekeeping amendments as part of Exhibit A, but I'll go through the important ones. And the first and I think most important amendment, at least from our standpoint, is the amendment reduces the total density of the development down to 227 lots. That's down from the 278 that was recently approved in the amended DA. And again, for context, the original agreement allowed for 635 lots. So this is now a reduction of 408 lots, or nearly a 2/3 reduction from what was originally approved in the 2013 agreement. The total LUEs for the development as proposed drops from 284 to 260. That 260 is a change from what is in your packet, and we'll go through that in a little bit. But the total reduction of LUEs goes from 284 to 260 in the amended DA. The part of what necessitated this reduction in lots was the drainage standards. This amended DA adds a section that requires the UDC to follow requires the developer to follow the current UDC standards for drainage. Previously in the DEA, the developer was vested to the 2014 subdivision drainage standards, which were much looser. Now, to their credit, the developer has been working from the beginning to meet the current drainage standards, so this document simply formalizes that process that they've been going through. During that process, we actually identified a conflict within the UDC itself, and that language is reflected in the development agreement. The peak runoff control rates within the UDC conflict with the San Antonio stormwater design criteria, which is our reference point for the UDC. So the DA cleans up that language, and we'll also propose that fix in our upcoming UDC amendments, part of which the UDC will hear in their final, or the P&Z will hear in their final workshop next week. Other changes, substantive changes to the development, the next change modifies the lot frontage standards from 150 feet to 120 feet on straight roads and 100 feet on knuckle-sacks and cul-de-sacs. This change allows for a curvilinear pattern of the development rather than rectilinear or more square blocks. By having 150-foot lot, that would require a more square development, which require both more infrastructure and a more, frankly, boring pattern, which doesn't really fit the nature of Fair Oaks Ranch. So this allows them to maintain the aesthetic that There's more in line with Fair Oaks Ranch and certainly the neighborhoods in the area. The lots will still be 1 acre or larger as outlined in the DA and per the proposed zoning as well. This will simply allow lots that are slightly narrower and deeper or longer, if you will. So to incorporate all these changes, the developer has submitted an amended concept plan that's shown on the screen, and that's all shown in Exhibit B of the DA, which should be on page 88 of your packet. Hopefully that hasn't changed. And finally, while we were in the neighborhood, so to speak, we decided to take the opportunity to clean up the language throughout the DA and the utility services agreement as well, which is attached to the development agreement regarding impact fees and water capacity. The previous draft had several references using both of those terms that we thought were confusing, and some kind of confounded the distinction between the impact fees versus water capacity. So now the amendment clearly states that impact fees are assessed at the time of plat recordation, which is in line with state law, and the fees that we charge will be the adopted rate at the time of the plat recordation. And to distinguish that from water capacity is defined simply as the total living unit equivalents, LUEs, which is now proposed at 260 total LUEs as a maximum. I forgot to change that one. So, so for the recommendation, again, the proposed resolution before you incorporates all of these items that I spoke about, along with several cleanup items. The revised Exhibit A and the full red line version is on the dais for you. Exhibit A lists all of the changes in the DA. Exhibit B is the same thing. It's just the red line version of the DA with the changes. Again, we've placed the revised motion before you that incorporates these changes to the LUEs as well as the cleanup items. Again, I think this agreement, it refines and makes stronger the goals that we originally set out in this development agreement. By it reduces density, conserving resources, and again, preserving the character of our city. These updates strengthen the original agreement more, add clarity to the agreement both for the city and for the developer. And again, I want to thank the Post Oak team. They are here tonight if you have questions regarding this development agreement, but they've again been great partners throughout this whole, of course, process of getting the development agreement to fruition, as well as the changes that we're talking about here tonight. So again, they've been a great partner. If you do have questions, they're here for you tonight. But with that, I strongly recommend approval on this proposed amendment. I'm happy to take questions, and again, the Post Oak team is here as well.
Any questions from council? Pretty thorough.
I have one. It might be for the lawyer, the attorney. In the amended agreement, Bitter Blue is defined as developer, or they're also defined as owner, and then depending on where you're reading, it either refers to developer or refers to owner. Why the two? Why the two different definitions? Does it depend on the scope of what's being, I guess, referred to in the actual agreement?
I'm going to defer to the city attorney first, because
Yeah,
we work
okay.
closely on defining these two items and why we made the change we did.
When we were going through the agreement, it had it in different, there's so many different agreements in the exhibits. What we were trying to do is just make it all one person, because you're contracting with one person. So that's why it varies between the different documents. So defining the one party, Bitter Blue, as owner or developer, that's the reason for that change.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Anybody else here in the room tonight have any questions that they'd like to raise? I don't know, anybody from Bitter Blue, any comments or? All good? I just didn't know if y'all had any, not putting you on the spot. Okay. Then could I get a motion to approve a resolution, a motion to approve a resolution approving amendment number 1 to the Post Oak Development Agreement as presented at the August 7th City Council meeting, and authorizing the execution of all related documents by the city manager. From Jonathan, and a second from Dale. Any other further discussion from council?
I'd just like to thank everybody on
staff and with the Post Oak team. I think you all did a fantastic job.
Thanks, Emily.
Shout out to Carol as well. She had to do all the grunt work
The
on
heavy
getting these
lifting.
changes before you, so thank you, Carol.
Anybody else? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being here. And you're welcome to stay.
That's a quick exit.
With that, we'll move on to our second consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution setting the maximum proposed ad valorem tax rate for fiscal year 2025-26, setting the fiscal year 2025-26 budget and tax rate, public hearing date, and other matters in connection therewith. And Summer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So for your consideration is a resolution setting the maximum tax rate council will consider for fiscal year 25-26 and the date for the public hearing on the budget and tax rate. At the time of the agenda posting, we had not yet received the final tax rate calculation, so the updated resolution has been provided to you at the dais. I'll start with a brief review of the tax roll data and present the calculated rates with a staff recommendation for a maximum tax rate to consider. Now, in addition to the homestead exemption, the city offers a $50,000 exemption for over 65 homesteads and a $50,000 exemption for disabled homesteads. For 2025, the disabled count decreased while the over 65 increased by 74 homesteads for a net increase in exempted value of $4 million for these categories. The city also enacted a tax freeze in 2022 for disabled homesteads. Now, this slide has a lot of information, and it has been provided to you. On the left is the 2024 taxable value and tax rate, and on the right 2/3 of the slide is the taxable value and calculated rates for 2025. The taxable value for 2025 is $2.8 billion. That is up 5.3% from 2024. Now, the first column for tax year 2025 shows the calculated no new revenue rate, which is 0.27524. And that is slightly lower than the rate in the proposed budget of 0.2794, shown on the next column. The third column shows our current tax rate of 0.2853. And the last column is the adjusted voter approval rate of 0.32619. The adjusted voter approval rate includes unused increments from the prior 3 years' foregone revenue. Now, staff is recommending that council set the current tax rate, 0.2853, circled in red, as the maximum tax rate to consider for 2025. This is above the rate in the proposed budget, but it will give council the flexibility to make changes to the budget during the workshop as we review the proposed budget and funding decisions. Now, council would be able to levy a tax rate up to this maximum of 0.2853, but if no changes are made to the proposed budget, then the tax rate will be the 0.2794 and not the maximum authorized by the resolution. So looking further down the slide, after accounting for a 99% collection rate, you'll see the calculated M&O levy and INS levy amount at each one of those rates, what the difference is from our current levy, and the difference on the average tax bill from 2024. At the recommended maximum tax rate, the average tax bill will increase $87, and at the rate currently in the proposed budget, the average tax bill will increase $44 for the year. You can also see that the average home value rose from $683,160 to $713,497 in 2025. But are there any questions on this slide? So these calculated tax rates are based on certified values as of certification, which is around July 25th. But values do change during the year, resulting from appraisal review board action. The overall taxable value increased 5.3%, and total exempted value, including those state mandated exemptions, increased $39 million. Both the tax rate calculation worksheet and certified value reports are posted on the Finance Department's Truth in Taxation webpage. So staff recommends approval of this resolution, which accepts the calculated no new revenue and voter approval tax rates for 2025. It authorizes the current tax rate of 0.2853 as the maximum tax rate to be considered for fiscal year 25-26. And it sets the public hearing date for Monday, September 15th, 2025. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from council?
Summer, I just have one question. So why are we addressing the no new revenue rate when it's either going to be the proposed budget or the current tax rate, depending on what the final budget? Why do we bring that up?
So by law, we are required to calculate what the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate are each year and present that to the governing body.
So it's a calculation, not a commitment.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then with that, could I get a motion to approve a resolution setting the maximum proposed ad valorem tax rate for fiscal year 2025-26 at 0.2853 per $100 valuation, and setting the fiscal year 2025-26 budget and tax rate public hearing on September 15th, 2025, and other matters in connection herewith. From Emily, and a second.
Second.
Keith. Any other comments from council? Motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Summer.
Thank you.
The next consideration item that we have tonight is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution approving the implementation methodology and pay plan structures as part of the city's comprehensive compensation and benefits study. And Joanne, I think you're going to initiate this. And
Yes, sir.
all right.
Thank you again. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Once again, my name is Joanna Merrill, the Director of Communications and Human Resources. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to bring forward this next phase in our comprehensive compensation and benefits study. As you'll recall, earlier this summer, City Council did approve our benchmark comparators and our target market placement at the 50th percentile. Those decisions gave us the foundation to begin aligning our pay plan with recommendations that both align with our values and the broader labor market as a whole. So tonight, we are going to be here to talk about the next two critical pieces of this process, how we place employees in the new pay plan and how we structure the plan going forward. So after a lot of discussion with our partners at Evergreen Solutions and careful review of these options, staff is recommending two things based on our internal goals and the study's current findings. The first recommendation is going to be that we are going to discuss tonight is the modified bring to minimum +1 placement for the implementation method. This means that any employee who's currently below their range minimum will be brought to that minimum range, and then in conjunction with that, all of the employees will be moved forward by one step. So one of the questions is why are we recommending this approach? Our consultant will also go over this, but there are a few important things that this does for us, and it ensures every employee is brought into our new plan on fair footing at or above their minimum range. It reduces compression, especially at the entry levels, which helps us recruit and retain competitively. It does also keep us fiscally responsible, as this method is significantly more affordable than some of the other options that are going to be presented tonight, but it still provides a real sense of progression through that pay plan for our teams internally. It does also avoid some of the pitfalls that we're going to see in other models like the compa ratio approach, which is basically it does lock in historical disparities, or even the hybrid parity model that can unintentionally erase past performance gains. So second tonight, we're also going to be recommending a step-based pay structure with a 1.5% progression between steps for a total of 30 overall steps in the pay plan structure. This structure is going to give us consistent, transparent path for employees to be able to view their growth in their roles during their tenure here at the city. The 1.5 steps does keep our budget manageable over time while still allowing us to recognize strong performance and tenure. The proposed budget impact of this recommendation is highlighted in the accompanying consideration page before you. But based on that analysis, the overall, sorry, I lost my place. Highlighted in this consideration page, but based on that, staff has identified areas within the current budget that would allow that overall cost to be managed through current savings related to current vacancies, actual reduction in the health benefit costs, because we did have some cost savings this year compared to the assumptions that were in the proposed budget, and then other efficiencies identified during implementation. Right now, this is considered a great fit for our long-term strategy, especially as we move toward implementing phase 2 of our performance-based progression as proposed during last year's budget and currently outlined in our strategic action plan. So altogether, this approach is designed to balance equity, cost, and clarity. This approach also ensures that our employees are fairly placed, our pay plan is future-ready, and our organization is positioned to attract and retain high-quality teams that our residents deserve. So before we do begin the actual presentation tonight, I do want to take a quick moment to acknowledge a recent change in our consulting team. So Carl Fuchs, who previously led our work on the compensation study up to this point, he recently accepted a new position and a new opportunity, and so he has transitioned out of his role with Evergreen. So we just kind of want to publicly thank Carl for all of the work that he's done and his expertise in collaborating with our team up to this point. And with that, I'm actually very pleased to introduce Rob Williams, who has stepped in as Evergreen's new project manager for the City of Fair Oaks Ranch through this process. Rob does have more than 25 years of experience across both the public and private sectors, including service as a county commissioner, CEO of a regional utility provider, the executive director of a multi-jurisdictional utility, and a business owner as well. He currently leads Evergreen's National Utility Division and has worked with clients across the country to modernize their compensation strategies and workforce planning. So Rob is fully briefed on our project history and the decisions made to date, and he will be guiding us through tonight's discussion and presentation and the final stages of this implementation process. We are excited to have him on board, and we are looking forward to the insight that he's going to provide us as we wrap this up in final reports to come. But with that, Rob, if you'll come up here for me, I'm ready to turn this presentation over, and he'll walk you through the rest of tonight's agenda item.
Thank you. Excuse me. Good evening. Don't adjust your dial. I know that this is a little bit of a departure from Carl, but I have to say I have the greatest respect for Carl. He's a dear friend. I had the opportunity to serve as his project lead for a time, and high integrity individual, tremendous work ethic, and he's going to go on to do great things. So very grateful to have the opportunity to be with you. As was mentioned, I have got up to speed, I feel, and I hope that I'll be able to provide you answers to the questions you would have tonight, knowing how difficult the decisions are once they reach the dais. all the easy choices are gone by the time things come to you. And so I want to try to give you the best possible information so that you can make the most informed decision possible. And so with that as the jumping off point, we can hop into the presentation. I did view the last meeting when Carl made the presentation on the market, whether you were going to go to the 50th or 66th. And so I did see that discussion as well as have an opportunity to meet with your team. So I kind of have an understanding of some of the conversations you had leading into this meeting. So status update, kind of where we are to this point. This is a very collaborative process. And so this is not a hire evergreen and we'll see you in 4 months with results. This has been markers, as you know, all along the way. And I have to tell you, I wish more clients would request what y'all have requested. And that is that interaction at those significant points in the project, because oftentimes I come to elected officials and this is their first time seeing it. Y'all have been immersed throughout the process, and I really feel like it leads to a better decision. So, kickoff call, assessment of current conditions, the survey of your employees, the survey of the market for salary and benefits. Then we put that information together, and that leads us to the point where we are today, which is the decision on implementation and the structure, which is vitally important when you start looking to recruit and retain talent in this market that you find yourself in, which is incredibly competitive. So today, we don't want to do death by PowerPoint here, but the idea is that you have options, okay? What do we want that structure to look like? And your first option is always the do nothing option. We're going to stick with what we got. We're going to stay at 2.5% a step, and we're going to have 20 steps, and we want it to be market competitive based off that. Or we have an option to go to a 30-step plan with a 1.5% increase, which I think with the strategy that you have and the compensation philosophy you have to reward tenure, but also reward performance, I feel like that 1.5% over the course of 30 years provides you a better opportunity to fulfill that goal. And I feel like it's a good option, a good pivot for you, if you will, because it kind of strikes the balance between employees' expectations, market expectations, and what you would have from a service delivery expectation standpoint. The open range, transitioning to an open range, that's also another option that's afforded to you. But experience tells me that if you have a step plan and you're going away from a step plan, you should probably have a pretty good reason for doing that. Or you may find yourself chasing a solution where there is no problem. Just wanted to throw this slide in here for you. This kind of gives you a flavor of where we are relative to wages and inflation. We're down off of the June 2022 number where we were around 9% inflation. We remember that. That was kind of crazy. And now we're getting back to what I would say is more of a traditional inflation marker. I think the last CPI that we had in Texas here, we were 0.3 up in June, 2.7 the last year trailing. So we're getting close to that Fed target rate of 2%. But the punchline for y'all is it's still sticky. Inflation is still sticky and wages are still increasing. So that if you want to stay competitive with market, it will be very difficult to do so if you don't move your pay ranges into a market competitive position, which that's the conversation that Carl had with you last time. We're not here because it's all rainbows and unicorns. We realize that we need to make a change. Key considerations that no employees would have a reduction in salary as a result of this study. So let's say we have a pay range and we're moving an employee into that pay range and they're above the minimum, okay? We're gonna move them into the pay range. We're gonna move them into the closest step that would be aligned with their current annual salary. And then we're gonna have to let the market catch up with them if they're already ahead of that minimum in the range, okay? But we're not going to move employees backwards. And then the implementation piece there, we already know about the market average. We talked about that in the last meeting. The implementation, basically the way our process works, Carl may have covered this with you, but we want to take all of your positions that you have here at Fair Oaks Ranch, and we want to move them into new market competitive pay ranges. And then we have to figure out how are we going to take employees that occupy those pay ranges and move them into the plan. That's the bring to minimum, hybrid parity, compa ratio, bring to minimum, step +1. Those are all those ways that we can take your talented team and move them into the new pay ranges, okay? The implementation cost that you see, the 219, that's for the bring to minimum +1 step, that would be your base salary cost. So we are recommending, as I said earlier, that 1.5% between each step, transitioning to that with 30 total steps. You take those jobs, you reassign them into the new market competitive pay grades. I think those introductory positions would be more competitive, but I want to caution that, we should not claim victory based on the recommendations that I'm seeing. And what I mean by that is we need to be very much eyes wide open. You're in a very competitive market. If you're setting your pay ranges at that 50th percentile at the market average, you're still going to have some positions that will require attention and that they may need to be modified within the first 12 months. If you notice that vacancies, it's taken longer to fill a maintenance tech position, for example, or a custodial position or whatever it might be, well, you might need to pivot. But your team is obviously good enough to do that. So when we get here to the recommendations, bring to minimum, as was mentioned before, bring to minimum is pretty straightforward. We are going to bring employees to the minimum of their new recommended pay range. So if currently I'm making $32,000 a year and the new pay range would start at 33, you're going to bring me to 33 from the 32. Okay? If I'm making 34, then you're going to bring me to the closest step that would put me at 34. Okay? Now, the modified bring to minimum, which really in conversations with your staff, and a shout out to Scott here, I really feel like good leadership with your team here, looking for a way to strike the balance between fiscal responsibility, but also trying to reduce some of the wage compression, okay? Because if we had just unlimited funds, well, then we could come up with an unlimited funding solution that would be 3 times the price that you're looking at now. But that's not the reality that we find ourselves in. So we have to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And so when we look at that, we believe this bring to minimum option does that. You bring employees into the plan, and then you add a step. So if I'm brought into the plan and I would be on step 2 with my current annual salary, then we're gonna add a step to bring to step 3. The idea would be that if you bring in a new employee subsequent to that, you should be able to hire them in on step 1 because you've got a competitive pay range, at worst at step 2, and that's behind your current employee. We've created some separation there, okay? The hybrid parity basically takes that thought process and extends it further. Let's say tonight you would say, Rob, I want to make sure we eliminate any and all wage compression. We're ready to make this investment, and I want to go with the hybrid parity. What would that look like? Well, hybrid parity, what that would do is it would increase the cost, but really it would focus in on time. Whenever you hear parity, think time. We're going to be moving employees into their new pay range based on how long they've been in their current job and how long they've been here in service to Fair Oaks Ranch, regardless of the job that they've been in. So that's another way to move them into the pay plan. And then lastly, we have compa ratio. We kind of show you this because we get a lot of questions on, well, what if we want to keep the relationship between employees the same? We don't think we have a problem that requires correcting. You know, we've got a lot of outside experience. Then we hire people here. We value that experience. And really what you call wage compression, we just call valuing experience when people come to work here. And so we don't have a problem with the fact that somebody might be making 44 and somebody else is making 40 and they're in the same job and the person with 40 has 5 years more tenure. Well, compa ratio says you would preserve that relationship. And so this brings us to, and we are not recommending that. We do not feel like that is the correct option for you. Here are your base salary costs. That 219 that's highlighted in green there represents 4% of payroll. That's the 1.5% per step plan. And then you also see open range costs. Why is open range cheaper than step? Because in open range, we can place an employee directly on the exact dollar amount salary. Whereas step, if I fall between step 2 and 3, you got to put me on step 3. That costs incrementally more, okay? Then we get to the 2.5% option. And obviously we're going to be, if we narrow up the pay range and we go from 30 steps to 20 steps where people are going to be getting to the max of the range sooner, that's going to increase your cost, okay? And so you go from that 219 handle up to around $314,000 for that. I really don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze there. I think with your goal to start recognizing performance and having that be more of a priority that you're giving to staff, I think that 1.5 and 30 probably strikes the balance to be able to do that. And so I know that's a lot. I do this all day, every day, and so I kind of geek out on the numbers and all that stuff, but I realize this is, not necessarily your world to get involved in every day. But I do my best to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? No? I had and I don't know if it's for you or for Joanna or we did something comparable to this several years ago. I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. We determined that we wanted to maintain in the 2/3 of the market, but yet as we go through this scenario, we found that in many of our jobs, we've even fallen below the 50% level. What does this compensation plan provide us that keeps us from doing that 4 or 5 years from now? Is there an answer, or is it?
I don't know that there's one set answer for that.
Okay.
I think some of that involves strategy and fiscal planning. A lot of being able to maintain an accurate placement in your compensation study comes every year when we're looking at what are we going to adopt for cost of living, or are we going to maintain the current progression through our merit-based systems? And the factors determining that they change every year with the market. So the recommendation always is to adopt what the current cost of living is so that you stay up with the market. That typically is where that biggest disparity comes into play. And then also setting, clear guidelines through your compensation philosophies. So how do we bring people in? How do we move them internally outside of merit or performance considerations? How do they promote through? How do we do lateral transfers? How do we retain if somebody in our organization gets a job offer from someone else? So those are all things that, as part of the pay plan overall, that could have an impact on whether or not we can maintain and stay up to market. But there are always going to be outside factors, regarding inflation or the market adjustments or things like that that could have an impact. And I think council does an excellent job of trying to stay up with that. I think you saw that even with the results from this year, that even though we were below in some areas, we weren't as far off as we could have been, which was encouraging for us to see. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it did.
It does.
Great.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier a chart with inflation timeline. And
Yes, sir.
Inflation shooting up and dropping down. Just curious, is that ever recalculated in down the road years in some way?
It's a great question because I find that the best organizations this kind of feeds into your question as well. How do we stay competitive? You make the investment to have a comp study, and then after the comp study, everybody's head's nodding up and down that thank goodness we fixed that. But then we have 2.7% inflation, and if you don't move your pay ranges the next year, congratulations, you're 3% behind market. And so how do we avoid that? The best organizations I see do a 3-year rolling average of CPI, regional CPI in their area.
3-year?
Typically 3 years, yeah, and you can kind of roll things out a little bit. And then they also set a marker to where if there is a certain level below or a certain level above, that's going to come back to you. And what that does is it provides basically that if we're in just a garden variety budget year, there's nothing extraordinary that happened, that staff can budget for how we're going to maintain competitiveness, and it doesn't have to necessarily come back to you every time, and it can just be wrapped up into your normal budget process. But also your employees can budget for their families because they have an expectation of, okay, council has approved that, we're going to at a minimum expect that we're going to keep pace with inflation because that's what they've said as a matter of policy. And so that's that idea that, inflation is moving and how do we account for that? I think that's done as a matter of policy, and the best ones do it on a 3-year rolling average. Good question.
I've got a question on the ranges. So you set these ranges up based on your research, based on our job categories. Y'all done all the research. Do you ever provide updates to those ranges, say, 2, 3 years from now, where we can just get an update to the range? Because there's two aspects to performance management. One's in an appropriate range, and then where you sit within the ranges should be based on your performance. So if job is from X to Y, that range might move, but you might move at a different pace within the range. That's kind of understood. But do we ever get back, and say in 2 years, would we ever get updates to our range to say they've actually moved up 3% in range back movement, or 2%, or 1 or 5? Do you ever provide that?
As part of a update to the study, it
Sure.
could certainly be provided. I would feel that, and I'm talking myself out of some money here, but I would feel that 2 years is too soon to do that.
Okay.
I think 3 years is probably when you should be looking to do that update, and you could even stretch it to 4 if we get back to more of a normal market and not the post-COVID market that we had coming out of 2020, which was, that was not normal. And so as far as adjusting the ranges, we see it 2 ways. You're correct. One is, where are our overall market ranges, the minimum and the maximum? Where do those relate to market? And every year we should be adjusting those to make sure overall our market is competitive, or our ranges are competitive. Then embedded within that, it's the employee, based on their performance, based on the policy priorities, the service level priorities that you set and that you want staff to go out and execute on. How are we going to move employees within those ranges so that an individual employee could be competitive not only to market in a market competitive pay range, but with their peers? If you and I are maintenance techs and you're showing up early and staying late and getting it done, and I'm on a personal improvement plan, every year we might get our same COLA, but you should be getting more than me in a perfect world, because you're a high performer and I would not be in that example. And so I definitely feel like you should be adjusting the ranges, but to your point, how they move within it, typically that would be a matter of policy.
I agree, and I distinguish between the two, because I think the ranges establish, first of all, in your study, you've tried to make sure we have jobs described adequately and that there's a market range for those jobs. So we've done a lot of work to get that done.
Yes, sir.
Seems to me that in 2 to 3 years, just getting the data to say whether range for this position is now moved up X, so we can just move the range, really doesn't impact necessarily the employee in the range unless they fall below the minimum, because within the range, the policy, the city manager would maintain and make those decisions. So it just seems to me we could get a data update to at least know if our ranges were moving directionally. They could move down, who knows, right? They could move up or down. But if they were moving directionally, it just seemed like that would just be a data feed just to give us the range info. And I didn't know if that's something you guys do, well, so that we didn't have to go do a whole new study, because we've got our jobs kind of defined now. We think we know, and if people are still doing a good job, they'll get moved within that range.
Yeah, so
It's just a question.
No, 2 things. One would be, employees actually are impacted. If you move the ranges, but you don't move the employee to keep their position in the range the same, then actually that employee's market position,
Sure.
market value has degraded. So the idea would be, if we're going to move our pay ranges 3% next year, then you should move the employees, preserve their placement in the range, so they're going to end up with a 3% increase. But that the next employee that comes in behind them that's hired would be hired at that introductory level. The next piece would be, the market moves all the time. And so the value in that 3rd year or that 4th year going back out to market and doing a study, that's to address some of the changes that happen in the living, breathing thing we call a market, where now an accountant is, gone up more than, a wastewater treatment plant operator or something like that, whereas right now they might be in the same pay grade. Your adjustment that you're talking about is a matter of policy. That's that CPI index adjustment. That's how you could adjust them, and not pay me to come back and do another study in a year or 2 years.
I understand.
Yeah.
Would that be, and this might be for Joanna, would that be the policy then or is it written somewhere that that would be the policy if we, bump everybody to where they need to be within whatever range, and then the new person comes in and they're hired at the starting point for that range? Is that the policy that you're looking at implementing? So, or will they come in and they could be hired anywhere in that range?
I would never recommend that one of my clients be restricted to maybe lose out on a talented professional because you tell that professional, we'd love to bring you in, and I know you've got 10 years of experience and you just moved here and you would be a perfect fit, and you probably should be paid about a $65,000 salary, but we start at 55. You wouldn't want to have that. You want to put the best folks in the best position you can. So I would have a policy that would verify that outside experience so that employees know you're not picking winners and losers, and you could recruit that person that has that outside experience. So the organizations that I work with where they're like, we're hiring at the minimum no matter what, that's just what we do. It very rarely works unless they're paying at the 90th percentile. Like they're the most, they're the highest paid in the market. Everybody knows it. Well, that's a little bit different, but I don't know if you want to.
I can just add to that. So definitely to answer your question directly, we could make that a policy. The way we post positions is we typically post the minimum entry level. We've even posted up to the midpoint range just so that we can show candidates that progression to try to recruit them and show them that there is flexibility within that depending on experience. Our current comp plan does have a structure for us kind of to follow, where you can be placed between steps 1 and 3, kind of based on your outside of experience. And then anything outside of that, if you have more or the department head feels there's a need to justify that, then that's reviewed internally as well. So we do still have flexibility within even our current plan. And I would recommend that we continue to be able to have some flexibility for the reasons that Rob outlined specifically.
Rob, that example you just gave was a good example. So somebody comes in, here's what our rate is, and they have a different number in mind. And your answer in general was what? Could you please repeat that?
Well, I think when you're talking about we have a stated published pay range, but let's say I'm going to move into assistant city manager. I've never been an assistant city manager before. Well, you probably should be offering me the job at the minimum of the range or close to the minimum of the range because I just don't have the experience that would justify necessarily placing me at a higher level unless there's other forces at play there. And so I think it's important to have a policy that how are we going to value outside experience? That same position comes available, and let's say I've got 10 years as an assistant city manager in another city, and you verify that, and you want to bring me in. Well, if we're in the negotiations and you're telling me all you can offer me is that minimum starting salary, that'd be tough. It's very restrictive for you as a leadership team and then also your staff as well.
I can see that, and is there other data besides the quantitative data, or could there be a qualitative section added for those gray areas on the candidates?
Well, I think one of the things you've done with the study is what market competitive looks like now. When you do the study and you say these are the target peers we want, this is what our market is. Go out and get the data. When we get the data, then we come back and you now know as policymakers and your staff knows this is what competitive looks like at the 50th percentile. And so I think it starts with that, to where you have an understanding of when you're offering a salary to a potential applicant, you're not just throwing darts at a board. You know what competitive looks like. And then, look, if that individual wants to work where they pay the highest amount, then you can love them on their way out the door and say, thank you very much. If you have 10 peers, like I always tell my clients, somebody's got to be 10th. And it may not be us. But yeah, I think it starts with the data, and then the other part, the qualitative part, that's in addition to it. Yeah, it's good questions.
I might. So one of the areas that we're really targeting for improvement is Public Works. You're aware of our policies and things. You know, earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that, you know, these are moving targets. You might have to adjust year to year. And your example that you gave was Public Works. You know, I just have to ask, are you aware of any reason why we might have to adjust for Public Works?
I'm a water and wastewater guy, okay? I kind of believe they're some of the best people you ever worked with in your life, so I'm a little biased there.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But they're having a moment around the country, sir.
Yeah.
It is unbelievably competitive. When we start talking about water and wastewater operators, you know, I'm working with clients where they're requiring as a condition of employment that they be dual certified because they can't find enough people to have one staffed as water and one staffed as wastewater. And so when you start talking about introductory maintenance tech positions, incredibly competitive. And so those are ones too. The difficult thing about some of these public works positions, they require a regulatory requirement that you can't tell, you know, the regulatory agencies, yeah, you know, Scott's like, no, we don't want to do that one. You know, we're good. You know, we'll get that compliance when we get around to it. That's not an option. And so I would always recommend that those public works positions, especially the ones that are tied to any regulatory compliance, you place those above the market average. So where you are right now is a good place to be. It's a good start, but it wouldn't surprise me if you see the need within a very short period of time that you may have to take a maintenance tech from a pay grade 106 and move them into a pay grade 107. That's not going to turn your whole pay plan upside down. That's just reacting to the market, you know? And so, yeah, I think Public Works is one of those ones up there, like our law enforcement professionals, super competitive.
Thank you for the insight.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Good? All good? Keith? Anything else?
Yeah, I think so.
Yours
I
returning.
don't think I got my question quite answered because I wasn't asking you a policy question. I was
Let's
more
take another stab
asking
at it.
you, accountant two, in 2 years, do you have market data for an accountant two that we could access? That's all I'm asking. Not that,
Not free of charge.
well, you don't have a database of that? Or do you have to go out and, I guess my question, do you have to go out and do a study from scratch, or do you have a database of this information?
Okay, now we're talking differently. Like my
That
dad
was
told
my
me, never
question.
give
probably did a
away for
bad
free
job
the only thing
explaining
you're
it.
good at. So I wouldn't say that we would give that data away, but what I would say is we could age the data. And what I mean by that is if you were to tell us, look, we don't want you to go out and do a full-blown study, but we want to know your professional recommendation based on clients you may have in the area, how much should we age the data? And what I mean by that is for each client or each peer, it may be different. We might not do an across the board, like a CPI adjustment, we're gonna move all the ranges 3%. We may, within the data, we could look at it and say, okay, we know that this peer gave a 3% raise, so we're gonna age that data 3%, but this other peer that we had, they skipped a year. They didn't adjust for cost of living, so that one's gonna stay the same. And so, yes, we could do that, where we would look at the data, and it would be what I call kind of more of a snapshot.
Right.
But for the amount of money that you would pay for that, even on a discounted basis, I think your CPI adjustment will get you 90% of the way where you need to get to, and it's just hardwired in. But yes, we could do that for you. And it wouldn't be the cost of what you paid for in a full-blown comp study.
Okay.
Did that
That
answer
answered
it?
it, yeah.
Okay,
And just to add to that, Councilmember, we've already talked about that internally. It's not part of this study, but we have spoken of it in 3 to 4 years, like Rob mentioned. It would be, like you said, a much smaller cost to do, not the full-blown pay plan, but just a market update, and we think that makes perfect sense. Again, not every year. It's something that in the past we've done internally, and on an ad hoc basis, and that works okay. But to do a full job market update every 3 to 4 years, I think makes sense, and I think that's something they could do efficiently.
Yeah, I just think that's good to help keep us on track, so we don't get off track. And like Jonathan said, there are certain positions that are in more demand and might change, but thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Everybody's good? Any questions from anyone here tonight? All right. Then can I get a motion to approve a resolution adopting option 1B from our packet, which is to bring the minimum at 1.5% progression between 30 steps as the methodology, implementation, and plan structure and progression strategy for the city's compensation plan. From Jonathan? And a second?
Second.
Emily? And any other discussion from council? Any comments y'all want to provide, or? Everybody good? Motion on table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to step in for Carl. I'm grateful. Hopefully I get to see you again.
Yeah, Rob, I'll say you guys made this really easy to understand for me personally. So between our city manager's guidance and your teams, thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to our next consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and approval of an ordinance authorizing the issuance of City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas combination tax and limited pledge revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2025, providing for the payment of said certificates by the levy of ad valorem tax upon all taxable property within the city, and further securing said certificates by lien and by a lien on and pledge of the pledge revenues of the system, authorizing the execution of any necessary engagement agreement with the city's financial advisors, and providing an effective date.
That's a lot.
Thanks, Summer.
Sure. Again, I'm Summer Fleming, Director of Finance, and here tonight are Andrew Friedman and Jack McLiney from Samco Capital, the city's financial advisors. So for your consideration is an ordinance that authorizes the issuance of certificates of obligation, of which the proceeds will fund capital improvements to the city's utility system. Now, under Texas Local Government Code, Section 1201, the ordinance must be approved on the same day that bids are received. Therefore, tonight's reading will serve as both the first and final reading, superseding the city charter's 2-reading requirement. So after going through a ratings call, S&P Global Ratings affirmed its AA+ rating on the city's existing general obligation debt and assigned the same AA+ rating to the certificates being issued tonight. Following that, the notice of sale was posted on Thursday, July 24th, and bids were received just this morning. So Jack McLiney will now present the bid results and answer any questions you may have.
Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be here again. Just to echo what Summer said, since the last time I was here, June 5th, we approved the Notice of Intention resolution. In that time, we went out and we engaged S&P for a rating. They came back after review and affirmed our rating of AA+, which is the second highest rating that a city can carry. It is the same rating that the federal government carries, and we do not have the ability to print money. So that being said, that rating, it's a testament to previous councils before you and y'all's actions as a council, as well as the behind-the-scenes work that the staff is doing. This morning, we went out for bid at 10 a.m. and at 11 a.m., and we received 8 bids back from all across the country. Y'all see this bid result summary page that I handed out to you guys before the meeting. List the bids in order. The winning bid was Piper Sandler & Co. with a 3.965 true interest cost. That is really been, we've had 5 bond sales throughout this past week. This has been the best bid that we have gotten compared to any of the others. Moving on, you'll go and see the final numbers connected to that. The first page being the sources and uses. See the bond par amount, $7,815,000. The purchasers paid us a premium of $312,726, which is covering our cost of issuance, and our project fund had a deposited amount of $7,930,000. Skipping 2 pages ahead, you will see the bond debt service. That breaks out our principal and interest payments per year and a call date of 2/1/34. That is 9 years out, and when that time comes, if rates have moved in our favor, y'all may elect to, at that time, look at things and see if we want to refinance. Lastly, you'll see the bond summary and statistics page. On about 5 items down, you'll see the true interest cost. That true interest cost, $3,966. That is a great, great, great number to be looking at. With all that being said, Samco's recommendation is to accept the Piper Sandler's bid. And with that, I'll open up to any questions you guys may have.
A lot of good work, and thank you all. And I believe we talked about it earlier in summer as we came up with this. The debt service that goes on to the wastewater bill is part of this. For water service, I believe it's 4 cents per month as a result of the issuance of this certificates of obligation, which is really little to no impact. And then for the wastewater bill, we're seeing actually a decrease as part of the service fees or.
Right. When we started the debt issuance last year, we took the 5-year CIP and our scheduled issuances and were able to structure the debt repayment schedules in a way that would provide stability for the utility customers in their debt service fee. So over the course, we shouldn't see very small changes to that fee each year for residents, for customers, yes.
And I think it comes up later during the budget workshop. We'll see where.
I will address that a little bit, yes, during the
Okay.
budget workshop.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Can I get a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas combination tax and limited pledge revenue certificates of obligations, Series 2025?
So moved.
Is that Scott? Any other discussion, comments from council? Everybody's good? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Summer.
Mayor, if I could briefly get 2 signatures for you, so I can get this back out of the purchasers.
So serious that we need to file this like right now? Today? .3. You need to get Amanda to sign it also?
Yes, sir.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
On the hook. Our next consideration item up tonight is the consideration and the possible action approving a resolution authorizing the execution of an interlocal agreement with San Antonio River Authority regarding FEMA floodplain management and the execution of all applicable documents by the city manager. And Lee, if it's floodplain, it probably falls in your area.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My name's Lee Muniz. I'm the manager of engineering services here at the City of Fair Oaks Ranch. I'm here to present a resolution for an interlocal agreement between the city and the San Antonio River Authority regarding FEMA floodplain revisions. I have Jose Fernandez from the San Antonio River Authority to answer any technical questions the council may have. So as part of this ILA, SARA would be responsible for reviewing floodplain map revisions packages that would normally go to FEMA for approval. They would review the data in the package and create finalized documents for FEMA approval. San Antonio River Authority already provides this service for Bexar County and now proposes to extend to Kendall County, which includes parts of Fair Oaks Ranch. This ILA will not require any exchange of funds between San Antonio River Authority and the city because the developer or property owners are responsible for payment to FEMA regarding floodplain revisions. Fair Oaks Ranch staff members would not be impacted by this agreement as well, as this ILA only involves the floodplain revision process once staff has reviewed and approved documents to send to FEMA for final approval. So some of the benefits of the ILA for Fair Oaks Ranch are speeds up the review time for floodplain revisions by allowing SARA to perform technical reviews locally instead of sending it to FEMA. It reduces the burden on the city's floodplain administrator while maintaining local oversight. And third, SARA's in-depth knowledge of Cibolo Creek, which is currently handling a model update, makes them well-positioned to provide accurate and effective reviews. And finally, ensures alignment with regional partners. Kendall County and the City of Bernie have already approved the same agreement on May 13th and July 22nd, respectively, of this year. So the next steps, if the City Council approves the ILA, SARA will have all the required local partners, which are Kendall County, Bernie, and Fair Oaks Ranch. SARA will then submit the agreement to FEMA for final approval, and then once authorized, all future floodplain revision submittals that are in our city limits and are within Kendall County will be reviewed by SARA, improving the responsiveness to citizens and developers. So in summary, this ILA reflects a regional collaboration to enhance floodplain management efficiency. It offers tangible benefits to properties, owners, developers, and the city by accelerating a typically slow federal process. Staff recommends City Council approve of this resolution to enter into the interlocal agreement with San Antonio River Authority. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, Joe or I can answer them. Yes, sir.
Lee, this is wonderful news.
Yes, it is.
I remember some projects you were working on in Fair Oaks Ranch where we had old data, and trying to get data takes a long, long time.
Yes,
This
sir.
looks like it's speeding it up quite a bit.
Correct. And then another thing, in speaking to that, one of the great things that the San Antonio River Authority provides already for Bexar County is they have a repository for all these studies, but it's only limited to Bexar County right now. So by expanding into Kendall County, we will now have access to that repository that those studies are normally stored at, instead of going through the FEMA process and trying to request that data, which does in fact take a long time.
I think I already know the answer to this, but we're a 3-county city,
Correct.
okay? What about us lowly Comal County people?
So, unfortunately, and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, but unfortunately, we are not at that stage yet. But I'll let Joe elaborate because I believe there is works towards that.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman members. My name, like Lee says, is Joe Fernandez. I work for the San Antonio River Authority. I am the Lomar Program Administrator there at SARA. I work in the engineering department. I've been there for a little over 18 years now, so been there through all these map updates all the way from 2010 and going forward now with the new ones that are coming out. Like Lee said, the ILA is for Kendall County. It's a portion of Fair Oaks Ranch that falls in there. We understand that Fair Oaks Ranch also falls in Comal County. Our goal as a river authority, so right now we have a 4-county jurisdiction, which is SARA's oversight. That is what they see. Bexar, Wilson, Karnes, and Goliad. We've seen some expansion. We have received comments from different counties and cities on the northern ends and asking why is SARA only doing these 4 counties where the San Antonio River Basin goes further north in itself, following into Kendall County up to all the way to Kerr County, On the east side, we got Comel, Guadalupe. On the west side, we got Medina and Bandera as well. Our goal is to hopefully move forward into those particular counties as well. So if we look at it correctly, we're hoping to have Comel County as far as Fair Oaks Ranch next year. Our initial was discussion to talk to FEMA about being able to expand this program in itself. It's something that is very new to FEMA. FEMA was never aware of a particular cooperating technical partner, is what they call it, that wanted to expand their program. In the state of Texas, there's two organizations that do the reviews on behalf of FEMA on the FEMA side of things. Harris County Flood Control is the other one in Houston in itself, but they haven't asked for expansion. We are wanting to do that. We want to be able to go ahead and serve our counties, our neighboring counties and communities to be able to provide this service. We've been, like Lee says, we've been with City of Fair Oaks Ranch in Bexar County for now 13 years. We started this program in 2010, and we're moving forward. Our turnaround time period, FEMA has about 13 to 14 month time period to complete from start to finish our review. Our times are looking at about 3 to 4 months in itself. Why is it so fast? It's because, like Lee had mentioned, our staff is so familiar with the rivers, the creeks that are here and the watersheds, importantly, that we understand what we're looking for. We understand those models that are coming back and looking at that, and better communication with those that are submitting those LOMAR reviews. At the same time, we work with the communities, City of Fair Oaks Ranch in particular. We work with them. If there's a question or concern when they're getting it on the community side of things, we're here to help and provide the services that we can. So ideally, we are looking into Comel County, but we're starting with Kendall County first and then hopefully moving forward.
I get you. We just, it seems to me that if we're working as a city, there's gonna be a blank spot, I guess.
Yeah.
when the new maps are drawn, and, that's not really helpful for the entire city planning, I would think. But,
Right.
hopefully you'll be able to convince them that,
FEMA
you need to
headquarters.
move into Comel County
That's
as
the
well.
goal, and hopefully so. So you'll probably see me again here for Comel County to try to get the approval for that, but.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation when you're in a city that's in multiple counties.
Yes,
so-
absolutely.
Jonathan, I got you, but I have a follow-up question to this. So Kendall and Bexar County, construction or development within the city would go to San Antonio River Authority. But in this case, if it were in Comel County, then that would have to go to FEMA?
FEMA headquarters, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like you don't miss out, but you just get the long process.
I think I'm hurt.
Will this ILA impact the money that changes hands from developers and landowners to FEMA?
So, once again, this does not have any impact financially at all between counties and the communities and even Sarah. We don't have any revenues or making, any funds out of this. We work purely from FEMA grants itself, yearly grants. Those grants is what we apply for, and those grants pay for the man hours, our staff in place. So there's nothing on there. When it gets to the FEMA federal review side, FEMA has a set of guidelines of how much fees. For a Clomar, it's $6,750. For a Lomar letter map revision is $8,500. So forth. All that goes up to FEMA. We have no touch of that. We send those in it. So those fees are standardized and set by FEMA, so we don't touch any of that. That's on the FEMA federal side. Now, when it comes to the community, and in this case, Lee or Grant themselves, it has to go through the community approval process first before they get the approval from these two gentlemen here to be able to submit to FEMA for the final step for FEMA approval in itself. Without their approval, it doesn't go up to FEMA for any review. So we don't get to see it until they say it's all good. The reason why FEMA does that, FEMA has just the standard guidelines of what you need to be following. Communities are allowed to have stringent rules, higher standards, whatever it may be that they have. FEMA accepts that and wants and encourages that for the FEMA. So they encourage that so that they can have that in there and making sure that there's higher standards that the city and the community and the county have prior to getting to the FEMA side.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that FEMA won't so FEMA put some grant money out for you guys to pick a project up, right?
Correct.
And they won't automatically go try and recoup some of that grant money that they paid you guys from the developers that they paid you guys to do the work for?
Correct. We don't touch it. We don't see that, any of those fundings. So anything that the city has as far as fees that they have for approval of their reviews, that's between you and the city and the developer. Once it gets to the federal side, it's just that $1 amount that's set in there. That fee goes straight up to FEMA, and that's just to cover the cost of whatever it is that they're doing the review. Sarah does not see any of that funding.
Okay.
We work purely on just the federal grant.
Question? Sorry about Comel.
I promise you I'll be back and we'll take care of that.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Any questions from anyone here tonight? With that then, can I get a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the execution of an interlocal agreement with San Antonio River Authority regarding FEMA floodplain management and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager? From Dale and from Jonathan, any other comments from council? Everybody good? Motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved.
Did the mayor just look at me?
Do what?
Did you look at me when you said opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for being here tonight. And thank you for standing up in the comments. We have our last, I believe it is the last consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and the possible action to accept applications for vacancies on boards, committees, and commissions, and to reappoint incumbents and to schedule interviews for new applicants.
Yes.
Amanda.
Good evening. Amanda Valdez, Deputy City Secretary. We'll start off with a quick review of the annual process to fill the vacancies and upcoming vacancies due to expiring terms on our city's appointed bodies. So on June 6th, we emailed our incumbents asking for their willingness to continue to serve. We also published the details on our website, and we worked with Casey in our communications department to continuously notify our residents of vacancies through social media during the application period, which ended August 1st. So that brings us to August 7th. So tonight, council's considering whether to reappoint incumbents and to determine a method for appointments to any remaining positions. And we're also seeking direction to schedule interviews if necessary. These will need to be scheduled on or before September 18th, when council will formally appoint and/or reappoint members by resolution before their terms begin October 1st. So page 255 of your packet lists a summary of the possible vacancies, and this is just a brief overview so that you can see that on your screen. Staff has confirmed that all applicants meet the requirements to serve on an appointed body. And we'll get started. I'll just give you a brief overview. So the Building Codes Board of Appeals will have one vacancy due to an expiring term. That member is not asking for reappointment, and we've received one application for that. The CIAC, which is the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, will have 3 vacancies due to expiring terms. One incumbent is seeking reappointment, and there's a slight change on here from your packet. It says that only one of them must meet the requirements of being a representative of real estate development or the building industries, but it's actually 2. There was a Senate bill that changed the requirement that it goes from 40% to 50%, and so the person that is vacating the at-large position will now need to meet those requirements, which should not be a problem because all of the applicants do meet the requirements to be on the CIAC and hit that, the requirement for real estate development or building industries. We'll move on to the Municipal Development District Board. There are 4 expiring terms. 2 of those positions are designated for council members, and one of those positions is designated for a FORHA board member. All 4 incumbents are seeking reappointment, and we did also receive 4 new applications for that board. We'll move on to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we do have a current vacancy, and that is for an unexpired term, and that is for the position that Mr. Pearson had on the P&Z, and when he was elected to council, vacated that position, and we have received 4 applications for that position. The Transportation Safety Advisory Committee, there are 3 vacancies due to expiring terms. That might seem a little weird because this committee's only existed for 1 year, but we staggered the terms, and so when we did the initial appointments, there was the understanding that some of those terms would have only 1 year so that we could create that stagger. 2 incumbents are seeking reappointment, and we have received 3 new applications for that board. And finally, the Zoning Board of Adjustment will have 3 vacancies due to expiring terms. That's 2 regular members and 1 alternate. 1 regular member and 1 alternate member are seeking reappointment, and the current alternate has also expressed interest in serving as a regular member, but we did also receive 1 new application. So that's 15 vacancies in total. If council were to elect tonight to reappoint the 9 incumbents, then that would leave 6 vacancies, 1 on the Building Codes Board of Appeals, 1 on the CIAC, 1 on the P&Z, 1 on the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee, and 1 on the ZBOA. Staff has also confirmed that 6 of the 7 council members are able to attend a special meeting on September 4th at 3 p.m. for the purpose of conducting interviews. We also reached out to the applicants, the 8 applicants, who have not served on an appointed body before, and they have been provided a tentative interview time for September 4th, with the understanding that council was taking action and finalizing the details at tonight's meeting. And so, for the purposes of just being easier, I just put the proposed motions on the screen. The first option is to accept the applications and to reappoint all incumbents and set the meeting dates for interviews. And just for ease, we're going to assign September 4th and September 18th. The September 4th meeting would be at 3, that's a special meeting, and we do have 1 applicant who cannot make that date, and so we are proposing that they would be interviewed during the regular city council meeting, early in the meeting. Option 2 would be to accept the applications and interview all applicants, incumbent or new, and then we would have to talk about scheduling some meeting dates for that. And that is the completion of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you've got them.
Any questions? And Amanda, for the 2 council members, Ruben and Keith, serving on the MDD, I believe we've already appointed them with their term to start.
We have appointed them through the resolution that we do for the council appointments, but we also have to appoint them via resolution in this way afterwards. So it's just kind of ratifying or formalizing that.
Okay. My thoughts is to reappoint those that would like to continue to serve, volunteering our city. I believe we have a lot of great people that have stood up to volunteer, and for many of them, for all of them, they're doing a great job. For many of them, taking the time away from what they do on a daily basis to serve here at the city, and they want to continue to serve, I think that's a great thing. And it's also good that we ended up with 8 new applicants. I think we do have a responsibility to interview them. We would, 7 of them, if we went with the schedule of September 4th, we'd do 7 of them in a special meeting that would start at 3 o'clock on September 4th. And then we'd have 1 left over that couldn't make it on September 4th. And that interview would be incorporated as part of an executive session at the beginning of the meeting on September 18th. That's the plan, unless you have anything different. Okay. And can I get a motion to accept the boards, committees, and commissions applications and to reappoint all incumbents to their respective boards, committees, and commission positions and set the following dates for interviews on new applicants as the 4th of September and the 18th of September?
So moved.
Second.
Ruben, any other? So I was going to ask for comments or questions from council. I did not ask for anybody have any questions, references from the people that are here tonight. Okay. Any additional questions or comments, discussion items from council? With the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Amanda. And that completes the consideration items that we had on the agenda for tonight. We'll move on to our workshop item, which is a look at the 2025-26 budget.
So we are now in the final stage of the 3-month-long budget process. The proposed budget before you reflects council's direction throughout the workshops and incorporates extensive input from both staff and council. So tonight marks the 4th and final budget workshop before the city manager formally files the proposed budget with the city secretary on August 18. Now, as outlined in the approved resolution tonight, a public hearing on the proposed budget and tax rate will be held on September 15th, and final adoption is scheduled for September 18. So starting with the general fund, the proposed budget includes a 6.4% increase in property tax revenue. It's about 5% above the 2024 tax levy. It includes a 2.2% increase in sales tax revenue, which reflects a 3.5% increase over the current year's projection. Operating expenditures are increasing 7.5%. However, total expenditures, including capital and transfers, increased just 3.4%. The proposed budget also includes a 4.5% increase in personnel wages, continued contributions to the Equipment Replacement Fund, and maintains the operating reserve in line with city policy. So since the last budget workshop, proposed expenditures have increased about $372,000 for a public safety contract, and property tax revenue has increased about $108,000 to maintain a balanced budget. So total revenues are projected at $11.08 million, and operating expenditures are proposed at $10.62 million, resulting in an operating surplus of a little more than $460,000. After accounting for capital outlay and transfers, the general fund budget is balanced. So with this balanced budget, there is no change to the fund balance total. However, $390,000 of unassigned fund balance will shift to the operating reserve to meet the updated reserve requirement. The operating reserve increases to $5.31 million, and the unassigned fund balance is estimated at $2.47 million. Now, these are the new items this year that are already incorporated into the proposed budget. Most of these are one-time costs, except for Zen City Software is a subscription-based service, and the purchase of officer cell phones would have an ongoing service cost. And then here are unfunded requests that consist of IT initiatives identified ahead of the final IT master plan. These costs would be shared equally with the utility fund. But at this time, I'd like to open the discussion to council regarding the funded and unfunded new items requested this year. If there was anything that council wanted to discuss making changes in the proposed budget.
For council, this is really the time that if you have concerns about whatever is part of the budget, this would be the time to raise those concerns. Because really after this, we're moving forward in posting
The proposed budget, yes, will be filed with the city secretary on August 18th. So we would welcome the guidance from council.
Anybody?
Yeah, when would we have more, what's the target date to have more information on the breakout of the IT master plan? Because it's a fairly large expense. Do we have an estimated date?
I believe Scott would know.
I work with Jim too, but our estimate is 1 to 2 months. We were hoping that would be ready before the budget went through. We're still working through the final, both the strategic priorities as well as the actual projects within that plan, so it's not there yet. The question for the council is, and this is the request that we know about when the IT, that dollar amount, when the IT master plan actually comes out, it may or may not be those exact projects that are prioritized. So this would essentially plug pending the IT master plan. But I'm guessing it's probably 2 months out.
Okay, sometime probably October or so, we hear.
Right.
So we're just gonna hold this in our budget for that. As it works out, we'll figure,
So the question, it's as Summer mentioned, it's not funded as of this evening. The direction that I will take, if you have it, is should we include it as an appropriation to be determined later, or the contrary, if it's not in the budget and we identified projects later, we'd be essentially using the reserve to fund those programs.
Our question for Scott, so at our last meeting, we talked about possibly getting Grant to resubmit his presentation from last August following the Public Works, right? And on the, mayor's comments here, he's saying that it's kind of crunch time. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any deadlines to make a motion to get that going. 'Cause I've been talking about it for months, so it'd be a shame if it just went right by.
Yeah, so based on the conversations that I've had with you, I believe you're referring to the maintenance leads for the drainage program. Those are not in this budget. One of the advantages that you just adopted with the maximum tax raise, we do have the flexibility if we wanted to kickstart that program, we would still have the flexibility to add that in, and we could still do that before September 15th, which is when we would have our public hearing and first reading.
I would say let's work towards that then. I would be interested in seeing how it went round 2.
So is the recommendation to plug in 496 and wait to get more details later, or just take it up later as we get that information?
My recommendation is to include it, and understanding it will not be spent until we have a plan and we come back. And most of these items would likely cross the $50,000 threshold anyway, so you likely would be seeing them individually anyway. But that would be my recommendation. But again, we could work it either way.
if we include it in the budget, which is not in there currently, and we based our tax rate estimate, that would have to be adjusted, correct?
Yes, sir.
And does that fit within the max rate we talked about earlier, if we included it?
I don't recall, Summer, what is the
It would
delta there?
not, it would not, so that would be split evenly with the utility. So the general fund would see $248,254 applied or appropriated in the budget. Without using additional reserves, that would put the tax rate at 0.2883, which is above the 0.2853. So we could fund up to the maximum and then use unassigned fund balance to cover the difference.
So 0.3 over.
Since we just approved the maximum, it seems to be hard to fund the whole thing, right?
Without using reserves, correct?
Right. So maybe we could do what you suggest. Use, for anything that over the maximum, we have some reserves, some surplus that's unallocated. We could use that for that difference.
Yes.
Or we could wait
Or we could wait.
and see
What it
what
is.
it actually is. And if we're gonna have to use unassigned anyway, we could decide. kind
Yeah,
of
the
as
difference would be
needed.
the amount of unassigned that we would use, presuming we approved a
Right.
substantial portion of that, yes.
But without knowing really what it is, I would be in favor of waiting, personally.
kind of think we should fund at least up to the max. Because we're just a few pennies difference between the max rate that we talked about earlier and what we'd need. And it may not even come in at this. Y'all might do something less.
Keith,
That's
what do you,
just my
what do you
thought.
see as the benefit for going ahead and providing the funding now?
Well, we'll have the revenue through our tax rate to cover it. We won't have to dig into our surpluses as much. And if we have any other items come along that we aren't unplanned, we'd have that room. But we're talking about what, the tax rate of 283, did you say?
2853 is it's the current rate and the maximum that you just adopted.
Yeah.
I was coming with the same thought process that Ruben and Emily presented. Really we know that it's related to the ICT master plan initiatives. We just don't know what those are.
Right.
And this is really an estimate on what we believe is going to come as a result of that IT master plan. Is that?
Based on what we previously identified, yes.
I just don't want to tax our citizens on something we don't know.
And I agree with Emily on that, but if this is a educated estimate that will need to be adjusted, also don't want to be short-sighted and not providing for funds that we might need to make sure our IT department has what they need. So if you feel like this is a good estimate, subject to change, or if we feel like there's a lot more work to be done on the amount, if we don't feel confident that that's close or near plus or minus 5 or 10%, I would wait. But if we feel like that's going to come in within reason for your master plan, I would say we'd provide for it. Then the second part of my comment would be, would all that be spent in the next budget year, or is that master plan going to be done over several years?
Right.
In that case, I would not provide for it. So I'm kind of talking through all the scenarios. If it's not going to happen in 1 year, why would we provide the whole amount now? That would
Well,
be my
it's
thought.
kind of both, to your point. What I was going to say is that it's, while I mentioned that we're working through the prioritization and what we want to accomplish first, the one thing I am confident in is that this will be a multi-year plan, like you're saying, and so this will not be the totality of the IT master plan. I can guarantee you that much.
This is an estimate of year one of a multi-year plan?
Correct.
Oh, this would be year one spend and not the multi-year spend?
This is, I mean, again, year one based on what we have previously identified. So we have this, we have, other projects identified through the master plan. What I don't have is an exact portion of what's going to be parceled through years 1 through 5. So these are projects we know are coming with more on the way.
I think I'm gonna wait, because I think until we get better numbers, and I got it, and I understand now. I was thinking this was kind of the whole master plan, might be this year, might be multiple years, but if it's a segment of the whole thing, I think we wait. I'm in the boat for waiting, and not.
That way we have the opportunity to review each individual item as being
Right.
presented, and, okay.
Plus, we have surplus.
So in that case, right now, it'd remain as an unfunded.
Yeah.
Which we can do. Again, I have zero problem with that, just understanding that when we come back to you, and I shouldn't say numbers because you hold me to them, but you will see ultimately a proposed plan that is 6 digits over multiple years in a recurring pattern. And that is the entire point of the master plan, is to get us on a cycle of replacement so that we don't get these large infusions of outdated technology and software that we have to make up for. But it will be a multi-year, multi-$100,000 or $1 million plan ultimately.
Does leaving this unfunded now impede our grant process in any way?
It does not. No,
Okay.
that's a separate process, and we've already planned for that.
Anybody else?
Okay. Well, then we will move to the Strategic and Capital Projects Fund. So the proposed budget includes 2 ongoing drainage projects at approximately $325,000 combined, and 3 new projects. A city facilities master plan budgeted at $100,000 will serve as a long-term roadmap for managing, maintaining, and investing in the city's buildings and infrastructure. It will assess current conditions and identify future needs to ensure that facility investments align with the city's goals and mission. The second new project is construction of a fence at Fire Station Number 3, budgeted at $36,000. The proposed perimeter fencing around approximately 40,000 square feet of open yard will provide a safe storage space and safe maneuvering of large trucks, trailers, and equipment. And lastly, the proposed budget includes $35,000 for strategic planning to support alignment between council and staff on shared long-term vision for the community and to establish clear priorities and focus areas for policy, operations, and investment. As you know, the original strategic action plan was developed in 2018 and has served as a valuable framework for guiding priorities and budget decisions. However, a comprehensive update is now warranted as priorities and goals may have evolved over the past 7 years. So this budget totals $495,480 and is fully funded from prior year project savings, so no transfer from the general fund is needed. Additionally, almost $225,000 remain unallocated in this fund for future projects. But are there any questions on these proposed strategic projects?
Good.
Just one, is that 35,000 for consulting
That's my-
services?
I was going to ask that.
It is, and the slide says a workshop, and there would be a workshop as far as, but that's for the entire process. But yes, it would be for an outside facilitator and planner.
You know, we have done, we did some work this year, Scott and Jim, worked on updating our strategic plan. And it takes some expertise. Is that
And a lot of time.
Nice way of saying that we need some help. And so really that's what this will do. And we have a good strategic plan. I believe that we can align this better to the goals that we want for the future of our city, and by tying the budget into that process, really provides that stair step. And that's the level that I think we need to get to. And honestly, I just see that we need help in getting to that level. All right.
Okay. So looking at the proposed budget for the Bond Capital Fund, it includes $315,000 for design work for Rolling Acres Trail reconstruction and $108,000 to complete engineering for Ammon Road reconstruction. The Dietz Elkhorn construction was initially budgeted for this year, but those funds will roll into fiscal year 25-26 due to the timeline shifts. Now, the project costs in this proposed budget are funded from the first issuance of the $16 million voter-approved GO bond. A second issuance is planned for August 2026. But that concludes the governmental funds. Are there any questions before we move on to the utility proposed budget?
Everybody good?
All right.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay.
So the utility proposed budget reflects an 8% increase in operating expenditures, including the same 4.5% increase in personnel costs. It provides for investment in infrastructure, one-time improvements to meet TCEQ requirements, continued contributions to the Equipment Replacement Fund, and it maintains an operating reserve equal to 7 months of expenses. For fiscal year 25-26, there are no proposed changes to the service availability charge or volumetric rates. However, specific purpose fees will change. The surface water fee, which covers the cost of water distributed by GBRA, will rise from $15.90 per month to $18.50. It's about a $31 annual increase. The TCEQ fee, though minimal, will go up by 1 cent per month, and the estimated debt service fee will increase by 4 cents per month. And on the wastewater side, the estimated debt service fee is expected to decrease 12 cents per month. Now, all these fees are recalculated annually based on actual costs and the number of connections on July 1st. And we will continue to see that debt service fee remain fairly stable, because as I mentioned, we structured the debt service payment schedules for the 5-year CIP in a way that provides stability for the utility customers. So in total, operating revenues are projected at $6.24 million, and operating expenses are proposed at $6.1 million, resulting in a combined operating income before depreciation of a little more than $141,000. Now, by division, the proposed budget shows the water utility with a $238,000 operating income before depreciation, and that wastewater reflects a $97,000 operating loss. That's primarily due to the one-time $100,000 rehabilitation expense required by TCEQ. Without that cost, wastewater would show a modest $3,000 operating income before depreciation. But after factoring in depreciation, both utilities report operating losses. Given the utility's significant investment in infrastructure and other assets, depreciation is an important indicator of the long-term sustainability. So it will be a key factor in evaluating whether future rate adjustments are needed to support reinvestment in the system. Now, the operating revenues and expenses reflect the utility's core services. In contrast, non-operating items are tied to activities outside of the day-to-day operations. So those non-operating revenues include impact fees, which are legally restricted for growth-related infrastructure, capital reserve fees, which are set by ordinance used to cash fund capital projects, the debt service fees, which are restricted by bond covenants, and interest earnings. And non-operating expenses include the debt service payments, interfund transfers, and a proposed capital contribution in fiscal year 25-26 to support infrastructure that would deliver purchased water directly to the northeast portion of the city. So combined, these non-operating activities total $1.33 million, which offsets the $679,000 operating loss. And so this results in a net increase of $648,000 to the utility's net position. Now, net position is the difference between the utility's assets and liabilities, so it represents the overall financial standing. Most of it is invested in capital assets which are not available for spending, but the remaining components of net position include $973,000 in the water and wastewater capital funds, projected $837,000 for equipment replacement, $1.84 million in debt service reserves, and it leaves $3.58 million in the operating reserve. That's equal to about 7 months of operating expenditures. Now, the utility CIP budget is funded by the certificates of obligation just issued tonight. The water CIP totals $7 million for fiscal year 25-26. That total includes $4.3 million for the first phase of construction of an elevated storage tank, about $450,000 for the completion of electrical upgrades at plant number 3 and the SAWS emergency interconnect, $1.5 million for a water line on Dietz Elkhorn, and $750,000 capital contribution for a GBRA water line. The wastewater CIP includes $1.8 million for 2 projects. That's the wastewater treatment plant phase 1 expansion, which is currently in process, and the installation of a sewer line and decommissioning the Falls Lift Station. So, are there any questions on the proposed utility budget and CIP? I feel like I've talked a lot.
Did a great job. Any questions?
Just one simple question. How confident we are in the impact fees, because these are obviously estimates based on what development we see?
For what we've...
1.2 million and the 590,000 that was on page 322. The revenue, non-operating revenues. I think it's the next.
So that includes impact capital and debt service fees. That's
Oh, okay.
inclusive. I would have to look at the line item detail to see. impact fees, we usually just take a historical.
Okay.
It did not account for the updated impact fee or specific number of homes that might be developed next year, especially with the new developments coming online.
That's what I was curious if that was in that number, so not yet.
It might even be higher than that.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
And those go into a separate fund, and then they're held there for capital projects that are eligible to be used by the impact fees.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Okay.
So this proposed budget will be filed with the city secretary on August 18th, and then we'll come back again on the 15th for the public hearing and final adoption on September 18th.
Oh.
And that concludes the budget workshop.
Did you get everything you needed, Summer, from? Okay,
I think so, yes.
Scott? All right.
Sir? Got a week and a half, and we'll have a document for you.
So we'll just move into the quarterly financial and investment update?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. You already thought you talked enough,
All right.
but you're doing a great job, so
Thank
it's
you.
good information, so.
All right, so this is the quarterly financial and investment update for the period ending June 30th, marking the close of the third quarter. So tonight's presentation focuses on year-end projections for the general fund and utility fund, and these projections serve as the foundation for the beginning fund balances discussed in the budget workshop and will be used as we finalize the fiscal year 25-26 budget document. So the city's financial position remains strong heading into year end. Updated projections through June indicate the general fund expenditures are projected to come in $580,000 under budget, primarily due to vacancies. This results in a projected addition of $400,000 to fund balance and maintains the 6-month operating reserve. The Strategic Projects Fund is projected to have approximately $700,000 available for fiscal year 25-26 from project savings and cancellations, and of that, $496,000 is included in that proposed budget. And then the Utility Fund is projected to add $1.59 million to net position, and that's primarily through investment in capital assets. But starting with the General Fund, total budgeted revenues are $11.04 million, and with year-end revenues projected to come in $64,000 over budget. Notable increases are seen in the property taxes. That's due to adjustments to the tax levy during the year, fees for services, and higher than expected interest earnings. Those gains are partially offset by shortfalls in sales tax, municipal court revenues, and other miscellaneous sources. Now, the total levy for fiscal year 24-25 is $7.6 million. That includes the M&O portion reported in the general fund and the INS portion reported in the debt service fund. But as of the third quarter, 98% of the levy has been collected. And including delinquent taxes, we project to exceed budget by $96,000 in the general fund and $11,000 in the debt service fund. Now, sales tax, the second largest general fund revenue source, totals $1.1 million year to date. It's slightly ahead of last year. However, current trends suggest that we will fall short of the 3.5% growth assumption in the budget. So a more modest 1 to 2% increase is now expected by year end. New residential permit activity has declined as anticipated. Through June, 39 new residential permits have been issued, and despite the slowdown in new residential permits, total permit revenues are projected to exceed budget by $11,000. Now, general fund expenditures are budgeted at $11.29 million with projected savings of over $580,000. You can see these savings are primarily due to personnel vacancies in public safety and public works. And then we have minor savings in other categories. The key variances are detailed in the financial report footnotes. So the general fund is projected to close the year with a $400,000 surplus, resulting in an ending fund balance of $8.07 million. Of this, $4.85 million is reserved as the city's operating reserve, and $2.86 million remains unassigned and available for future needs. Now, the Strategic Projects Fund is supported by transfers from the general fund, and it includes several projects scheduled for completion this year, along with a few that were canceled. So under the Reliable and Sustainable Infrastructure pillar, we're seeing savings from the cancellation of the community center and Dietz sidewalk projects, completed projects such as City Hall renovation and the Post Oak Trail, and then the Vestal Park Drainage Project, which will now be completed in-house, contributes further savings. Under the Operational Excellence pillar, savings come from the compensation and benefits study, which came in under budget, and some modest savings after completing the personnel policies update. Now, altogether, these savings create the available funding for appropriation in the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget. So in the utility fund, we're projecting combined revenues to exceed budget by approximately $101,000, driven primarily by the water division. The water operating revenues are projected to come in $94,000 over budget. That is a downward adjustment from last quarter. While consumption was significantly ahead of budget during the first half of the year, usage declined in April through July, reducing my earlier projection. Wastewater operating revenues are projected to exceed budget by $67,000, and this has remained consistent throughout the year. As for non-operating revenues, water is projected to exceed budget mainly due to higher than expected interest earnings, which are helping to offset lower impact fee collections. On the other hand, wastewater non-operating revenues are expected to fall short due to decreased impact fee projections. Now, on the expenditure side, utility operating expenses are projected to come in $138,000 under budget. Again, that's primarily due to savings in personnel. We're also seeing some smaller projected savings in the other categories. But again, after accounting for depreciation, the utility is currently projecting an operating loss of approximately $439,000. Now, this doesn't indicate an immediate cash shortfall. It just highlights the need to continue planning for reinvestment in our aging infrastructure. So while the utility is projecting that operating loss, the positive impact of the non-operating revenues, such as interest earnings and those restricted revenues, it results in a net increase of $1.59 million to the utility's net position, and this brings the projected ending net position to approximately $20.3 million. But are there any questions before I move on to the quick investment report?
Questions from council? No? Question? No, I started down there. Jonathan thinks I like him first. No. Any questions from anyone here tonight? Okay.
Okay. So the city began the third quarter with a total investment balance of $28.4 million and ended the quarter with $26.9 million. Approximately 95% of these funds are held in government investment pools, with the remaining 5% maintained in the city's Frost Bank accounts for operational purposes. During the quarter, $1.7 million was withdrawn to support ongoing operations and project-related expenditures, and investment earnings for the quarter totaled almost $293,000. The full investment report is included in the packet. It provides additional details on each investment pool, along with a comparison of interest rates. But I'm happy to answer any questions on the investment update you may have.
Anybody else? Any other questions? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Summer, thank you. Thank you and Julie for what y'all do and the rest of your team. And honestly, the professional finance and accounting that you've provided to the city and even demonstrated in the presentations that y'all have had. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That completes all the agenda items that we had tonight on. Do any council members have any announcements that they'd like to make? I have two announcements. We will hold an open house here in this room on August 13th regarding the upcoming construction of the water line on Rolling Acres and Willow Inn Redbud Hill. The purpose of the open house is really to explain the project, what's going to go on with it, but also to explain the impact that it'll have on residents as part of construction, and also the impact it'll have on traffic during that same time period. The open house will be held on August 13th. It'll be from 4 to 6 p.m. right here in this room, and we'll provide that information. We do have 3 public hearings coming up. The Planning and Zoning Commission will conduct a public hearing on August 21st at 6:30 p.m. That's during their regular scheduled meeting, and that'll be receiving public testimony on the rezoning of the 344 acres known as the Post Oak development. And they'll also be receiving information reference amending the future land use map. The City Council will follow on, yeah, I got the dates wrong. Did I get the dates wrong, Carol? So right. And then City Council will follow on August 21st and have a public hearing on the same topic. And at that same meeting that night, we'll hold a separate public hearing, reference the annexation of the 2.9 acres that's being considered for our location for the water storage tank. Thank you, Carol, for catching that. August 14th for P&Z, August 21st for City Council. Scott, that's all I got. Any other announcements?
Nothing from me.
Is there any items from any council members that you'd like added to a future agenda? All right. Tonight, council will convene into executive session pursuant to section 551.101 of the Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code of Quorum of the governing body hereby convenes into executive session under 551.071, consultation with attorney to discuss legal requirements necessary to contract for fire and emergency medical services. As part of this, we need all the council members, city manager, city attorney. You wanted the assistant city managers and chief of police. Okay. And I anticipate this taking 30 to 45 minutes to go through the information. And just to give you a heads up, I do not anticipate any decisions being made as part of this executive session that would require us to make a decision after the executive session. So just to give you a heads up. It's a possibility, but not likely. So that everybody's aware. All right, I have the time now is 8:42, and we are moving into executive session. For council, I'll give you 5 minutes to 8:50. If you want to take a break, stretch your legs, and then we'll get started. Casey, you got me? All right. I have the time is now 9:49, and we are back in open session. During the time frame that we were in executive session, there were no decisions made that required consideration back in open session. Amanda, anything else that we need for tonight's meeting? Anything we missed, or Scott, from your?
No, sir.
Good?
Good.
All right. I have the time now is still 9:49. We are adjourned.